So far in this class, we've just been talking about one person making decisions about labor and leisure. And as we've been reading about in these notes, however, the real world is much more complicated than this. As you know, people will live together with other people who have thoughts and feelings and values on various aspects of their lives. And as a result of this, some sort of joint decision-making process must be used somehow. And what we want to implicitly assume is that the goal is to, maximize household happiness or utility. Right? And essentially, we want the total amount of happiness of all the people in the household combined to be as high as possible or as great as possible. In other words, we're saying that spouses or partners care about one another, and if they have children, the parents care about the children as well. Okay? And there are realistically two ways to model this. So one way to do this is to assume that everyone in the household is exactly the same in every way, except for perhaps physical differences, or by assuming that only one person makes all the decisions and that everyone else simply obeys this person. Right? So we can assume that everyone's the same. Right? and that except for maybe physical differences, and as a result, right, that everyone just obeys one person, right, the head of household. Okay, and because everyone is exactly the same, it doesn't matter who this one person is who actually makes all the decisions. Whoever the head of the household is going to make exactly the same decisions no matter what. Okay, so who it is doesn't matter. Okay, so this model, we used it for a very long time, right? And the implication here is that it doesn't matter, who earns the income in the family, as the family will spend the same amount of money on the same things and will choose the same amount of work for pay, household production, and leisure either way. Okay. Now, empirically, this model, which we'll call, model A, right? Model A, where everyone's the same and everyone obeys, one person. Empirically, it doesn't really tend to hold up at all, right? And somewhat shockingly, this was the dominant model in economics for decades. Okay. The other model, which has only recently been sort of developed, is to assume a sort of collective model. All right, so this is, you can say it's a collective model, where every person is unique. And not just in terms of like their wants and desires, but also their capabilities to produce anything, right? So maybe one person in the house is really good at household construction, and the other one is very good at earning income, right? And so here, right, what we have are different people with their own, set of thoughts, feelings, and values. And what they do is they bargain with one another in a weird way. Okay, and so they bargain with one another over how to allocate time. Right? Basically, when I say bargain, I don't mean bargaining in like the traditional sense, though it could be, right? I don't mean like, we start haggling back and forth or anything like that. All I mean when I say bargain here is that the two people will come together and they'll come up with some way of sharing the combination of labor and household production and leisure such that everyone is as happy as possible, right? So obviously, let's say my girlfriend and I live together. Obviously, right, I would like her to do all the work for pay and all the household work, and then I could just consume all the leisure, right? Unfortunately, she would almost certainly leave me if I did that, right? And I'd have to give up my job, which I don't want to do, right? And so what we do, or what we would do, I presume, I haven't talked to her about this, so if she's watching this, hi, right? Let's have a chat. So what we would do is we would say, like, okay, me, so Dave, you are better at being flexible in your work hours, right? You can work from home, which means that you can also handle a lot of the household chores, and she unfortunately does not have the opportunity to work from home like I do, and so she might have to not do as many household activities as I might like, right? And so that's the bargain that she and I would have to make. Okay, and so at some level, right, the power that each of us has in setting the terms of the bargain would be related to how well each person would do if the partners were unable to resolve their conflict and the relationship was ended. So here, what we're saying is, your bargaining power is related to how well the other person would fare if you broke up with them. Right? So those of you who watched House of Cards, right? So if you have watched House of Cards, skip ahead another 30 seconds. Or if you have not, sorry, if you haven't watched House of Cards, skip ahead 30 seconds because I'm going to spoil the end of season 3. Okay, so I'm giving you a chance. Skip ahead at least to about 8:15. Okay, so when Claire threatened to leave Francis, right? What did Francis say? He said, without me, you would be nothing, right? And so Francis is trying to show Claire that he has the greatest amount of bargaining power. Now, what ended up happening? Well, I'll let you guys watch season 3. Okay, so, but in there, Francis is literally saying, without me by your side, you are nothing, right? And that's what's going on there. They're arguing over their bargaining power, okay? And so what this idea suggests is that the person who would be harmed the most by the relationship ending is the one who typically has to acquiesce or give in to the other person. The person who brings the most to the table, I guess you could call it, is the one who holds a lot of the power. Okay? Now, there's growing evidence that this model is much, much more reflective of the real world, which includes some regrettable implications, right? Namely, that women with fewer economic resources, or more accurately, economic opportunities, are more likely to be victims of domestic abuse when disputes within the household arise, right? What this would mean is that helping women escape these abusive relationships takes more than just giving them money, right? Especially in a world where abusive men can extract control over those funds through, violence, and instead requires giving these women training and opportunities to flourish that cannot be expropriated by abusive men, right? And the wonderful thing is that domestic abuse claims have been estimated to be at an all-time low, as women have found more opportunities for employment and professional advancement, okay? So what I'm saying is that 100 years ago, let's say, the bargaining power that women had in their relationship was very low, because if the man left her, or if the man ended the relationship, I mean, women, since they had no rights, really, were in were screwed, right? For lack of a better word, they were not good, and so as a result, like them, they didn't have the power to end the relationship because they depended on the men. Okay, today that's no longer, or at least not as clearly the case as it was, 100 years ago. Right, we're taking very good steps in the right direction, and as a result, men are no longer able to abuse women because guess what? Women can actually leave and not die. Right, which regrettably was the world about 100 years ago. Okay. And so this collective model and bargaining with one another actually tends to generate some really cool results and some really great accuracy, and it tends to be the more powerful one. So this is the one that's sort of at the forefront of economic theory right now, is this collective model. We've replaced this one, so this one's largely gone, right? And this one's back, so or here now, right? So we like this one. I draw a thumbs up, but I'm terrible at drawing, so we just get a check mark, right? This is the one that everyone sort of believes today, okay? And so, whatever process partners use to decide the allocation of their time, some issues are going to be identical across households, even if the process by which they make a decision differs. And so, we can have all kinds of different processes within this bargaining thing, right? We can bargain in lots of different ways. Okay, we could, put all the suggestions into a hat and pull out the random winner, right? We could actually sit down and have civil discourse, right? We could flip a coin. These are all different means of making decisions. Okay, and so there's lots of ways that we can do this. Okay, and so one thing that we typically see is what we could call sort of a specialization of function within the household. Okay, so oftentimes households find it useful to have one partner sort of specialize in producing income, and the other partner specialize in household production. Right? Now, this doesn't mean that one partner earns all the income and the other one does all the housework. Right? It just means that one person does most of one thing and the other does most of the other, right? And oftentimes, one partner will bear primary responsibility for doing things like meal planning, shopping, home maintenance, and child raising. And in the event that both partners are working, this may be reflected in that one partner might have a greater availability to work overtime or go on work-related travel. Or the opposite case, one partner might have a greater ability to miss work or to cut out early in the event of an emergency at home, right? And so consider the case of a couple trying to figure out which partner, if either, will take primary responsibility for child raising by staying at home or by taking a job that has a less demanding schedule or a shorter commute, right? So, we have two partners, and this is where I reveal to you that my drawing skills are 0. Right? I passed my remedial art class in middle school, and I've never taken art since. So we have two partners. Right? One might be much more able to leave work early than the other, and the other one might have a job that doesn't allow them to leave. Right? And so which one do you think is going to be the one that tends to take care of the child, right? Well, probably the one who can leave more easily, right? Probably, right? But the question that ultimately comes down to two questions, actually. The first one is, who is relatively more productive at home right, relative to the other person, and who is relatively more productive at earning an income, right? And so, a married couple deciding whether one partner should stay home more and perform household tasks would want to consider what gains and losses would be incurred when one partner does so versus the other, right? The losses of staying home are related to the market wage of each, and the gains are related to the enjoyment of and skill at raising kids and taking care of other household tasks, right? And so, one example of this comes from two of my very good friends from graduate school. Actually, one of my professors and his now wife. They were great friends of mine while I was in school. And they got pregnant and had their first child, and it was very, exciting and happy. The downside is, both of them have PhDs in economics. Both of them were professors, but one of them had to stay home and take care of the baby, while the other one, went to work, right? And my professor, he stayed at work because his earnings were significantly higher than his wife's. He'd been at the university for a while at that point, and he'd gotten several raises over the years, and he'd taken on a few other positions, and so his salary was significantly high. And he'd written a few books as well, so he was making pretty good money. And she completed graduate school late in life. She hadn't quite written a book or two yet, and she was making significantly less in her position as sort of an adjunct faculty member than he was as a well, I think he was an associate professor at the time, but maybe he's an assistant professor, right? And so he looked at her and said, "Listen, you are more than welcome to teach classes if you would like, but my salary is sufficient that if I stay at work, if I work, we make a lot more money, and you can stay home and take care of Charlotte." Okay, and she and both partners agreed and understood, and that was how they decided in their household who would stay home and take care of the baby and who would go to work, right? And so, which is sort of reflective of an oft-cited and controversial statistic that women get paid something to the tune of 76 cents on the dollar for the work that a man does, right? And whether this is true or not is beyond the scope of this particular lesson. So for now, let's just sort of accept it and move on. If this is true, then every hour that a woman gives up working a job entails giving up less income, right? And by extension, fewer goods than if a man gives up an hour of his time working, right? And if both are equally good at the household tasks associated with staying home, then the household will maximize sort of its output by having the woman specialize in household tasks and the man going to work and earning wages and income, right? Now, again, this obviously is not true of all households, and there are plenty of instances of stay-at-home dads, right? And in some families, it's actually more productive to have both the husband and wife work outside the home and hire someone to watch the kids and clean the house, right? All of these decisions are context specific in the real world, and what I'm trying to do here is sort of just provide a framework for thinking about them.